Time for Three is going to come out, and we're delighted that they're going to have several offerings for us, which include some mashups, material, which we might consider from the classical repertoire by a composer like Mahler, for instance, mixed with music you may have heard before. Bittersweet Symphony, we've got music by Keith Richards, Mick Jagger. You'll also hear music by Britney Spears tonight. So something really for everybody, and somewhat of this sort of genre bending performances that they're so well known for. So they are also going to be playing a piece written specifically for the Sun Valley Summer Symphony. It was commissioned by the organization as part of their residency program. Now, the Sun Valley Summer Symphony, like I said, has had this long association with Time for Three, and they aren't just performers that show up here and walk on stage and perform for an audience. They are embedded in the community. They've been working with students ever since they arrived, and I'm going to invite RL back in just a little bit to talk about some of the work that they've been doing with these students. And just to give you a quick reference, I was talking to one of the cellists in the Music Institute who said to me that he learned more in 1 hour with Charles Yang, the newest musician of Time for Three. Learned more from him in 1 hour than he has an entire year of improvisation. So they've had an incredible impact on this group of students and other members of the community. So the main event, if you will, tonight is a work called Songs of Joy, which features some of the original material by Time for Three, and this music has been, if you will, pieced together, arranged, and orchestrated by this fantastic young composer standing next to me, T.J. Cole. Come up here, T.J. So I thought it's so rare to have a composer with us for a pre-concert talk that it might be fun to ask her a few questions about this specific project. And I'd like to just start by asking TJ, could you just tell us briefly a little bit about yourself and also how you came to work with Time for Three?
Well, I'm originally from Georgia. I started out as a pianist, and then I got into composition in high school, basically because I didn't want to practice piano and wanted to improvise instead. How I got to working with Time for Three, I actually met them as a fan of theirs and not as a musician. I had just started studying at the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia, which is where Time for Three was founded. And I went to one of their concerts. It was the first time I'd heard them perform. And afterwards, I got one of their CDs, and they usually sign them after, so I gave them my CD, and I was like, "Hi, enjoyed your performance." And they were like, "Oh, that's great. Like, are you a musician?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just started at Curtis." And they were like, "Oh, that's great. We went there." And I was like, "I know, you're famous. We all know that." So they said, "Oh, we'll keep an eye out for you. Like, keep composing. That's great." And then I think about 2 years later, I had an orchestra piece that was programmed on a concert that they were performing on, which was kind of mind-blowing. And they liked it, and Renan reached out to me to do a small arranging job for him. And he liked it, and then somehow they asked me to come out and work with the Sun Valley Summer Symphony, and that's kind of how it happened.
Now, you've actually been with us before, because last season, in the second year of their residency, you composed a piece for them as well. Could you just refresh our memories about that working experience?
Yeah, last year we collaborated on the piece Free Souls. I don't know, was anyone here for last year's Time for Three performance? Okay, yeah, awesome. Yeah, so that was a very different experience compared to this year because it was all instrumental, very hands-on, and actually it was just Renan and Nick that I was working with because Charles had not yet joined the group. So this year is very different because all three of them I've been working with all three of them on this piece, and they've written all the material, and yeah.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the creative process, because from what I understand, these are all original songs that they've written the lyrics to, written the music to, and what has that compositional process been like with them in terms of interaction and trying out ideas?
Yeah. Well, it started by them giving me recordings of these songs that they had already written the lyrics and the music to, and sitting down with them and discussing what it would be like to put this in the context of an orchestra, and how to also include their instrumental sound, because the songs are their newer sound that you'll hear tonight, which is them singing and accompanying. And I think because we worked together last year, they trusted me and were sort of just like, okay, that all sounds good. Go do whatever you feel like doing now. And then when the piece was mostly finished, or towards the end of being finished, then I sent it to them and said, what works, what doesn't, what are some of your ideas, and then sort of did some final details.
And that process, I like to think of composition as, we think of composers like Beethoven. On Sunday night, I have the privilege of conducting the opening piece on the program, the Orchestra Festival. What you might remember about that piece is it took Beethoven 4 attempts to create an overture for his opera, Fidelio. So a composer, a lot of the time, has to go back and make edits, and that too is part of the creative process. I think what we've gone through in the rehearsal process it's been fascinating for me sitting next to TJ as she's making little edits. Oh, maybe we should take out the woodwinds here or the brass here, but that's kind of a cool part of the process that as a young composer, one might just sit at your desk and write music, but it's not until the piece comes to life that you really get to deal with the challenges of that as well.
Definitely.
Now, could you tell us a little bit as well, TJ, about, again, this not just being notes on a page that musicians come and play, and that's it. It's not a black and white experience with Time for Three, but they bring their improvisatory musicianship to the piece itself. How did you incorporate that into the piece?
Yeah. Well, basically, I just tried to leave some spots where I tried not to write for Time for Three at all. I tried to let them write for themselves, because that's what they do, and they write for themselves better than anyone. So I felt like I should really just try to give them a solid something in the orchestra that they would be able to feed off the energy of, or be able to create around. So yeah, it was really just like talking with them and saying, is this something that you could see yourself playing with or improvising around? And that's how. Yeah.
I hope you're excited for tonight. I'm certainly excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's got to be a fun experience, I think, to be a composer and to be part of a creative project, to see something come to life like this, right?
Yeah, especially with a project that's so different and new, because I don't know of anything else that's ever been done quite like what you'll hear tonight. And this is also, Time for Three's sort of new sound. So to see their progression and to be a fan of theirs, and then to be a part of this new thing, it's really, really cool.
Great. Do you guys have any questions for TJ?
You said it was creating some waves?
I think the blow.
Oh. Okay, yeah. So her question was, there's this kind of wave sound in Songs of Joy that she heard during rehearsal today. That sound that you're talking about is brass players blowing air through their instruments. Yeah, to create sort of like a whooshing air sound. And that's what I love about working with Time for Three, is they love, doing fun orchestrational things like that, and they're all for it. So I get to throw in fun ideas, and hopefully they work.
Anybody else have a question for TJ?
Are
Yeah, so her question was, how long did it take to write this piece? Well, Time for Three and I met here in Sun Valley last October to start talking about what this, like the conceptual ideas of this piece. And I got to actually watch them start to write and improvise the base material. And then we sort of stepped back for a few months, and then they finished writing their 3 songs and handed them back to me, I want to say maybe in February or March. And then I started working on the orchestration in March and finished last month. So that's how long it took.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so the question was, do I write everything that's going on in the orchestra? The answer is yes, but Time for Three does have a say in that. So it's they also help orchestrate. So they may have ideas about, oh, well, maybe we should try this in the winds, or can we try this in the clarinets? But I do all the notation, which is the sheet music that all the performers reads so they can translate all of our ideas.
Allie.
The question was is if there's any improvisation in any of the orchestra parts. In this piece, there's not, but that's a great idea, and I'm probably going to use that. So thank you.
Make sure she gets a royalties.
5%.
Well, I'm sure it's an exciting event for you guys as well to be able to hear this world premiere tonight. So thank you, TJ, for your involvement in the project. And I was at an event last night, as was TJ, and the members of the group were talking about how much this community means to them, because it's really been here that right here in Sun Valley that's provided so much inspiration for musical material, the relationships they've had not only with the musicians but also with members of the community and with the students that have really fueled their creativity. So they're very grateful to be here and to have had this relationship for such a long time. Now I would like to turn things over actually to my colleague, Al Rousey, who will share a little bit about the education work that Time for Three has done as part of their residency. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Samir. So I'd love to just touch base on a couple of things that you all were talking about. First of all, the question about other parts, other instruments having improvisational work. Well, Time for Three has spent the last days with us at the Summer Music Institute. The Sun Valley Summer Symphony has a summer program, a 2-tiered program, an advanced program for strings, piano, and voice students. And there are 38 of them this year. And theirs is a 2-week-long process. And then last Monday, another, almost 300 students arrived at the community school. We have just over 300 students studying in all of the orchestral disciplines. But Time for Three spent time with their advanced students looking at this idea of improvisation and of large group improvisation. And they actually did exactly the opposite. They guided the entire group to be improvisational in their compositions. So they came up with an idea and sort of left TJ out of the mix. So rather than saying, will you give everybody specific parts to write, to sing, or to perform, everybody in the group was allowed freedom to improvise on the concepts that they had discussed together. And we divided the 38 of them up into 3 groups, and each one of the guys took a group and did one movement of this 3-movement piece. And then they shared them for each other. And it was really great because the guys hadn't heard each other's compositions until the morning of. And so when they all heard each other, they all grabbed their groups and they came running to each other going, look, we have to watch out for dynamics. Look, we have to be really careful. And I realized that Time for Three is far more competitive than I ever knew. It was really great. TJ was there. She was on the line watch. It was just great fun to watch them as they all were driving their groups to excellence. And the piece was really interesting. And so indeed, they were inviting the students to do what goes on in their heads all the time. And that was fascinating. The other question was about this idea of composition and then finally hearing the work. When I was these kids' age, I was 16, I participated in a program in Virginia called the Governor's School for the Gifted. I know. I think the year after that they took the gifted part out because their heads all got really big. But it was a really amazing program funded by the Virginia Department of Education. It was a 4-week program. We lived on a college campus. One of the campuses was dealing with science and math. One was dealing with history and social sciences. And our campus was all about the arts. And so I was studying music and theater for a month on the state's dime. It was really pretty great. So one day they told us we were going on a field trip. We headed up to Wolf Trap, the big amphitheater just outside of D.C. Didn't know what was going on. We were sitting out on the lawn. This golf cart, there were, 15 of us, 20 of us. This golf cart starts coming our way. And I was like, off of the golf cart steps Aaron Copland. For an hour, we sat with Aaron Copland as he talked. And then we watched him rehearse the National Symphony and his own compositions, and then went back that evening to sit out on the lawn and listen to the concert. It was amazing. But this is what I remember of the event. He said, lots of people do what I do. Most people don't have the great good fortune to have someone take their dots and play them. And in that moment of seeing dots become music, you become inspired to do it again and again and again. And so his thought was that there are many Aaron Coplands out there, just not many lucky Aaron Coplands. And I thought that was brilliant. So let me tell you a little bit more about Time for Three and the work they've been doing over the past 3 years with our kids here in the Valley and with our Summer Music Institute, because they've been involved in both sides. The Symphony has 2 primary student programs. Our School of Music, which happens during the academic year, supporting students here in the Valley, both in our core programming and in our partnership with Blaine County School Districts and the other schools in the Valley. We have the great good fortune to spend hours every week in the classroom partnering with the music educators in our classrooms around the Valley. So Time for Three has been involved in all of that work during the academic year. And indeed, those of you who have heard the commissioned works each year, we've had the great good fortune to premiere a component of that work each year before you heard it in the pavilion stage here. And last year, we were very, very honored to take a look at a piece with text, which in its final piece did not have the text. We're backing up now. We'll just hold for 1 second. That would be something you might hear from a rather noisy piccolo. So we got to take a look at some really lovely text with the work, and then the Time for Three has spent time in the classroom with the students, and specifically mentoring one of our string quartets. They're called the Harriman Quartet, and they're 4 students that met Time for Three when they were freshmen. And so they are now next year heading into their senior year. And all along the way, Time for Three have been their mentors. And whether they've been here in the Valley or whether we're Skyping them in for remote coaching sessions, they've worked with them all along the way. This quartet this year was placed first in the state competition for high school quartets. They perform all around the Valley. Indeed, if you'll go to a wedding or something here, you'll find Harriman playing at those events. They've become quite the little phenomenon. And we are very excited that we will be able to continue their relationship with the quartet, with Time for Three in their senior year. It seemed rude that just because Project TF3 was ending that we would leave them high and dry for their senior year. So they'll be involved there as well. I think if I had to identify what Time for Three does is brilliantly, as they walk into the classroom, they assess the situation immediately, and they create on the spot a program that is just right for the classroom that they're in. Here is a Renan answer to a question that he answered in year 1, and I may have totally changed this by now, but I'm going to stick to my guns and say that, oh, that's what's going on. I'm competing with myself or with others. Renan was asked this question by a student here. He said, how do you go about even thinking about the possibility of getting into a place like Curtis Institute? And Renan's a little guru-like, in that anytime you ask Renan a question, even if he knows the answer, like, what do you want for lunch? You see his eyes sort of scan, and you know he's looking at all the available data before he answers the question. And so there go Renan's eyes. And he says, I have a 4-part answer. He said, number one, you know that you have to work really hard, right? You have to have some talents and some skills, and you must work really hard. That's the easy part. He said, number two, you must be committed to this goal. And if you are that talented that you're going to study at some place like Curtis, you're going to get a lot of offers to do really great things. And for some of them, you'll have to say, I'm sorry, thank you so much for the opportunity, but oh wow! Now Renan, there's Renan, there, right there, talking. Maybe we should just listen to Renan for real. He said, if you were going to head towards that lofty goal, you will have to say no to some really great opportunities. He said, number three, you must be able to talk about your skills and your weaknesses. You must be able to articulate them. I am really good at this. I'm working really hard on this. I haven't mastered this yet, and that's hard. And then here was his number four, and this is the one that moved me. He said, and if you were going to be that committed to a goal, if you were going to have that lofty of a goal, if you were going to be that articulate about yourself in this process, you are bound to fall flat on your face over and over again. And every time that happens, you must be able to stand up and immediately forgive yourself. It's like a self-help book with Renan in 2 minutes or less. And I think that was the day that I knew that I had fallen in love with Time for Three and what they had to offer to our students. Because yes, every string player is a better string player for having sat in the room with Time for Three, but every person is a better person for having been in the room with them, whether they're a second grader or a high school student or one of the college students studying with them this week. They have a profound impact on our community, and I am proud of them for that. So what's next? What happens with Time for Three? Well, this is the end of Project TF3. You're sort of here for a pinnacle moment. Tonight ends that this 3-year partnership. Indeed, Rebecca Martin, the string instructor at the high school this morning, she texted me on the way to the Institute, and she said, I can't stop crying. And I went, what? And she went, it's our last day with Time for Three. So that's how profound that is. But we are already in conversations, not how we extend Project TF3, because it's had a good 3-year life. It's done its thing. But we are in conversations about ways that we might maintain an educational relationship. And I can't tell you yet what that looks like, because I don't know. But I know that Time for Three is interested, we are interested as an organization, and that we will go to the table to look at what is possible, what is responsible, and what might continue to grow our relationship with this amazing group, and also continue to expand the work that we're doing in our education programming. Are there any questions that I can answer about what's been going on with Time for Three? Maybe we should really just stop and listen to those guys. It's awful talking about them while they're right there and we could just be looking at them. I want to thank you again for being here. I want to remind you about the live streaming. Please feel free to spread the word that folks can go onto the website and check out our work. Also, please remember that you can go back and look at these events once they're archived on the website. The concert starts at 6:30. Don't be late getting to your seats. Thank you all so much. I will look forward to seeing you again soon. Another launch. We have a launch chat for every concert that happens here at the Pavilion this year. See you soon.